Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most underrated superpowers you can ever develop in life is the ability to shut your mouth, sit back, and observe. We live in a world that is obsessed with noise. Everyone wants to speak, everyone wants to be heard, everyone is rushing to react, to respond, to jump in with their opinion. And what does that get you? Chaos, drama, regret. The truth is, wise people, truly wise people, don't just react. They pause, they reflect. And when the moment calls for it, they stay silent. Not because they're weak, not because they're scared, but because they're smart enough to know that power isn't always in the words you say, it's in the ones you hold back. So if you're someone who's been feeling drained, frustrated, misunderstood, or just flat out exhausted by the noise around you, this message is for you. Because there are moments in life when silence is not just golden, it's transformational. Let's dive into the 5 times wise people stay silent and observe, and how doing this will change your life. When emotions are running high, there is a moment when everything inside you wants to explode. You feel wronged, hurt, angry. And the only thing your brain is screaming is, say something, defend yourself. But pause. That exact moment is when your power begins or ends. What happens when we speak while overwhelmed? We say things we don't mean. We say things just to hurt back. And those words, they don't vanish. You can apologize, yes, but the damage lingers. Wise people don't let temporary emotions create permanent damage. They understand something most people never figure out. Just because a thought pops into your head doesn't mean it deserves a microphone. Think about it. How many times have you said something out of anger and instantly wished you could rewind time? That feeling in your gut, that regret, that's the price of impulsiveness. But here's what most don't realize. Silence is not surrender. It's control. It's refusing to give your emotions a free pass to wreck your peace, your relationships, your self-respect. When you pause instead of react, you shift the energy, you buy yourself time to cool down, time to evaluate, time to decide what actually needs to be said, if anything at all. People think silence means weakness, but it takes so much more strength to keep your mouth shut when everything inside you is begging you to scream. You're not a puppet. You're not a reaction machine. You are a human being capable of choosing your next move. And the wisest move you can make when emotions run high, don't move. Sit still. Say nothing. The more you practice this, the stronger your self-control muscle gets. And trust me, self-control is one of the most powerful life skills you'll ever develop. People will try to bait you. Drama will chase you. Conflict will knock at your door. But when you stop answering with instant emotion, you start winning. You'll stop saying things you later have to apologize for. You'll stop escalating situations that could have been neutralized. You'll stop hurting the people you love because you couldn't handle a moment of heat. Silence in that moment isn't avoiding, it's strategizing. It's giving yourself the room to respond with wisdom instead of reacting with wounds. And don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean you never speak your truth. It means you wait until your truth isn't being held hostage by your feelings. There's no shame in pausing. There's power in pausing. Emotional maturity is choosing silence over drama, peace over chaos, growth over ego. Every time you stay silent, when your emotions beg you to lash out, you take your power back. That's what wise people do. They protect their energy by mastering their reaction. When someone is trying to provoke you, let's get one thing straight. There are people out there who thrive on pushing your buttons. They live for the reaction. It feeds their ego, validates their own dysfunction, and gives them a sense of power. And when you react, when you snap back, defend, argue, justify, you're giving them exactly what they want. You're playing their game. Wise people know this. That's why they do something radical. They don't engage. They don't bite the bait. They stay silent and observe. You see, not every attack deserves your attention. Not every insult needs a comeback. Sometimes silence is louder than any words you could ever throw back. There's a level of confidence that comes with not reacting. It says, I see what you're trying to do and I'm not giving you that kind of access to me. That's what silence becomes a boundary. It says, you don't get to control my peace. You don't get to dictate my mood. You don't own my reaction. Every time someone tries to provoke you and you choose not to engage, you're building unshakable emotional resilience. You're refusing to hand over your power. And let's be honest, not reacting, it drives manipulators crazy. They want the fight, they want the show, they want the drama. When you silence also exposes people. Because when you're quiet, you're paying attention. And when you're paying attention, you see the patterns, the manipulation tactics, the emotional games. You stop being pulled into chaos and you start rising above it. Not in arrogance, but in wisdom. Because you've learned that silence protects your peace better than any argument ever could. The people who try to provoke you, they're not interested in understanding you. They want a reaction. And when you see that clearly, it becomes easier to stay silent. You learn to ask yourself, is this really worth my energy? And 9 times out of 10, it's not. It's just a trap disguised as a conversation. So instead of fighting battles that don't matter, wise people walk away with their energy intact. They let silence speak for them. They let their peace be their response. The next time someone comes at you trying to get a rise out of you, try this. Breathe, pause, smile if you want, and say nothing. Watch how that changes the entire dynamic. Silence, in that moment, isn't passive. It's powerful. It's you choosing not to dance with dysfunction. It's you saying, you don't get that part of me today. When you don't have all the facts, here's the trap most people fall into. They hear part of a story, see one message, catch a single glance, and immediately react. They fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. And assumptions, they are dangerous. Wise people don't live like that. They don't jump to conclusions. They don't play detective with half the evidence. They understand one powerful truth. You can't trust everything you think when your brain is rushing to close a loop. Silence gives you space. It gives you room to gather the facts, to hear all sides, to ask better questions. You don't owe anyone an instant reaction when the story is still unfolding. Think about how many arguments start from misunderstanding. How many relationships are damaged because someone responded to a rumor instead of verifying the truth. When you stay silent instead of reacting immediately, you stay in control of your own story. You don't allow misinformation to manipulate your energy. You choose facts over feelings. It's not about being cold or indifferent. It's about being smart. It's about saying, I'll respond when I know what's real. And most of the time, what's real isn't what people are quick to tell you. When you pause, you allow space for the truth to reveal itself. People who are rushing to speak are often missing the full picture, and what they don't know can hurt them and others. Silence is a superpower in a world of impulsive reactions. It keeps you from making enemies out of allies. It keeps you from judging situations you don't understand. Wise people know that reality is layered, that what you see isn't always what's happening, that emotions distort perception, and that silence gives you clarity. When you stop reacting based on partial facts, you stop being a pawn in someone else's drama. You stop getting used. You stop being manipulated by hearsay and hype. Instead, you start asking better questions. You listen more than you speak. And you build your understanding before building your response. This doesn't make you slow, it makes you precise. And precision is what separates people who get stuck in chaos from people who lead with intention. Sometimes you'll notice people will push you to say something right now, but you don't owe instant opinions to anyone, especially not when the truth is still hidden. Wise people aren't afraid of awkward silence. They're not afraid to say, let me get back to you. That space, that silence, it's not avoidance, it's leadership. The next time you feel the urge to jump to conclusions, pause, stay silent, observe. Because the person with the full picture, not the fastest opinion, has the real power. When the room is full of egos, have you ever been in a room where everyone is talking over each other? Everyone wants to sound impressive. Everyone's trying to prove something. It's not a conversation, it's a competition. That's where wise people separate themselves. They don't join the noise, they don't add to the chaos. They sit back, stay quiet, and study the energy. Because when everyone is trying to be loud, the one who's silent becomes magnetic. Not because they're invisible, but because they're intentional. There is something incredibly powerful about watching people instead of trying to impress them. When you observe, you learn. You notice who's performing and who's genuine. Wise people don't speak to be heard, they speak to add value. And sometimes the most valuable contribution is to say nothing at all until it's truly necessary. You can feel the shift in energy when someone in a room listens more than they talk. It's grounded, it's unshakable, and it commands attention without demanding it. Because the truth is, when your ego is in control, your mouth is too loud. And when your wisdom is in control, your silence speaks for you. Silence in a room full of egos is not retreat, it's a reset. It's you deciding not to get pulled into a contest you never signed up for. The person who speaks last often has the greatest impact because they listened, they processed, and they chose their words with clarity. Wise people also understand that ego-driven conversations rarely lead to real results. They're about dominance, not understanding. About spotlight, not substance. And you don't need to prove yourself to people who are performing. You don't need to win over people who aren't even listening. So instead of trying to match their volume, match your values, ask yourself, is what I'm about to say meaningful? Or is it just my ego trying to feel important? Silence doesn't mean you're out of the game. It means you're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. You're thinking 3 moves ahead while they're stuck on who gets the mic next. You don't rise by being louder. You rise by being wiser. And silence in the middle of ego storms, that's wisdom in action. When you walk into rooms full of noise, let your silence be the anchor. Let your stillness be the signal that you don't need to compete because you already know your worth. When listening is more powerful than speaking, here's the hard truth. Most people listen just to reply. They're not really hearing you, they're not absorbing, they're just waiting for a pause so they can jump in. But wise people, they've mastered a different level. They know that real power comes from real listening. Not listening to fix, not listening to defend, but listening to understand. Silence makes space. It allows people to feel safe. It tells them, you matter. I'm not rushing you. I'm here to hear you. And that kind of silence, it's rare. It's sacred. Because in today's world, everyone wants to talk, but no one wants to hear. Wise people use silence as a tool for connection. They understand that when you stop trying to control the conversation, you start building real relationships. Think about it. How often do people open up to you when you're silent and present versus when you're jumping in with advice every 5 seconds? Sometimes people aren't looking for solutions. They're looking for space to feel seen. And silence gives them that. Silence tells the other person, you're safe to be vulnerable. And when people feel safe, they open up, they trust, they connect. The irony? You'll learn more by staying quiet than by saying a single word. You'll hear what's not being said. You'll catch the emotion under the surface. You'll pick up on the body language, the hesitation, the story behind the words. And in doing that, you become someone who doesn't just talk, you become someone who gets it. That's rare. That's powerful. Silence also allows you to hear yourself, to hear your own thoughts, your own wisdom, your own truth before the noise of others drowns it out. You don't always have to respond. Sometimes the most powerful response is a pause, a moment of stillness, a breath. That silence says more than advice ever could. Wise people don't interrupt. They don't rush. They listen like it matters, because it does. Because behind every person is a story, and behind every story is a reason to slow down and hear it. Silence builds trust. It creates space for deeper understanding. And that kind of space, it changes lives. It heals. It transforms. The next time you're tempted to fill the silence, stop. Ask yourself, is this about them, or is this about me wanting to feel needed? Because often, the greatest gift you can give someone isn't your voice, it's your silence. In the end, your silence is your superpower. Let's be real. Silence is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's not avoidance. Silence is strategy. It's discipline. It's one of the strongest, smartest tools you have in a world that's constantly trying to provoke a reaction out of you. You want to know what wise people do differently? They don't jump at every emotion. They don't argue just to prove a point. They don't waste their energy explaining themselves to people committed to misunderstanding them. They stay quiet. They observe. They protect their energy like it's sacred, because it is. Think about what we just walked through. When emotions run high, silence gives you back control. When someone's pushing your buttons, silence puts you back in charge. When you don't have all the facts, silence becomes your shield against regret. When you're in a room full of ego, silence makes you stand out without even trying. And when someone needs to be heard, silence becomes the bridge that creates trust and connection. You don't need to speak to prove anything. You don't need to react to be powerful. In fact, some of your strongest moments will be the ones where you say nothing at all, when you walk away instead of blowing up, when you pause instead of clapping back, when you listen instead of trying to fix. You weren't born to chase noise. You were born to master your presence. And the person who can hold their tongue, regulate their emotions, and observe before they act, that person, they run the room. They lead the conversation. They create impact. So if you want to live a life that's clear, grounded, powerful, you've got to learn the discipline of silence. You've got to practice restraint when your body's begging you to react. And most importantly, you've got to trust that your silence speaks for you in ways your words never could. This isn't about playing small. It's about playing smart. It's about mastering the energy in the room instead of letting it master you. Because wise people, they're not loud. They're intentional. They don't just speak, they choose when to speak. And that's what makes them unshakable. So the next time you're tempted to react, remember this. Your silence is not empty. It's full of wisdom. It's full of power. It's full of everything you've learned, everything you've healed, and everything you've become. Stay silent, stay sharp, stay in your power.